Let us first address question 2. This question focused upon the fact that Rashi feels the need to quote from the pasuk in Hosea proving that there was an abundance of gold, which led to the making of the Egel, whereas in Chumash Shemot he makes the same point with respect to the abundance of gold, but does not feel the need to quote from Hosea. Before suggesting a response, let us look at the differences between Shemot and Devarim. Chumash Devarim encompasses Moshe's final set of speeches to the people, and begins the first speech with a series of rebukes regarding the times in which they angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In his opening words, Moshe references 7 such times, the last of which is V'di Zahav, a reference to the Egel. The context of Chumash Shemot is very different. That context is one in which the people have sinned, Moshe has smashed the Luchot, Moshe now returns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in an attempt to reverse the decree of annihilation. And it is in this context that first Moshe acknowledges the fact that the people have made a monumental mistake, Chataham hazeh chata gedola, and then goes on to say, Vayasu lahem Elohei zahav. Their sin was that they have made gods of gold. From the standpoint of the Pshuta Shel Mikra, there is a problem with the inclusion of that last statement, Vayasu lahem Elohei zahav, which seems to run counter to Moshe's intent. Moshe's intent is to seek forgiveness. In this context, the statement of Vayasu lahem Elohei Zahav would appear to undermine Moshe's presentation to God in his attempt to gain forgiveness on behalf of the people, in that it magnifies rather than diminishes the sin of making the Egel HaZahav. In the world of Medrash Halacha, the inclusion of this statement Vayasu lahem Elohei Zahav can be justified. Gemara Yuma quotes a machaloket between Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava and Rabbi Akiva as to whether or not in seeking atonement, vidui, one is required to enumerate and specify the sins that had been committed. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava argues in the affirmative and uses the pasuk in Shemot 32:31 as evidence that this is the case, where Moshe, in seeking atonement for Bnei Israel, mentioned what it was that he was seeking atonement for. Vayasu lahem Elohei Zahav. They have made gods of gold. Rabbi Akiva, however, disagrees, basing himself on a pasuk on Tehillim, Perek Lamed Bet. From the standpoint of Pshuta Shel Mikra, however, this is not the case, in that, as mentioned before, rather than diminish culpability on behalf of Bnei Israel, it magnifies it. And therefore, in theory, the statement of Vayasu lahem Elohei Zahav should not have been included by Moshe Rabbeinu. As a Pshuta Shel Mikra person, Rashi forewarns this problem, that with the words Vayasu lahem Elohei Zahav, Moshe is asking that God accept upon himself partial responsibility for the transgressions of Bnei Yisrael. In the words of Rashi, Atahu shegaramta lahem, etc. You, God, caused them to make the Egel HaZahav by providing them with the abundance of gold and silver and precious metals from which the Egel HaZahav was made. Rashi then goes on to provide us with the mashal of a king who indulged his son with everything without giving him a moral compass, leading him to a brothel and then expecting the son not to compromise himself by doing something that the king felt was morally wrong. According to Rashi, the intent of the pasuk was to demonstrate how Moshe was trying to melamed zechut, to present a defense on behalf of his people to avoid their total annihilation.